This Aaron Stern blog post, The Dark Side of Personal Development, really got me thinking.
Oh, yeah. What is it about this one? We're always trying to level up around here, so what stuck out to you?
Yeah, we're all about self-improvement, right? But this one kind of hit different.
Okay, I'm intrigued, so what's the angle?
It's like we're always chasing those golden nuggets of wisdom, but then you get this feeling like maybe, just maybe, those picture-perfect self-help gurus aren't giving us the whole picture,
Interesting. And what makes Aaron Stern's take on this different?
Well, he's not just some random critic. This guy is a successful entrepreneur, author, podcast host, the real deal.
Been in the trenches, so to speak.
Exactly. And he lays it all out there. The potential downsides, 16 of them. Some hit close to home, I gotta say.
Yeah. Okay, so spill the tea. What are some of these dark sides he's talking about?
Eternal student syndrome, for one.
Oof, I've been there.
Right. Always signing up for that next course, but never quite getting around to, actually doing the work.
Yeah. Information overload, the struggle is real. But I guess that feeds into Stern's bigger point. It's not about consuming knowledge, it's about applying it.
And he's got a point. We're so obsessed with quick fixes these days, but real growth, that takes time, effort, and getting our hands dirty.
No shortcuts, huh?
Nope. He also talks about spiritual bypasses, which, admittedly, sounded a bit out there at first.
Spiritual bypasses. Okay, I'm listening.
So it's like using spirituality or self-help to avoid dealing with tough emotions or situations.
Oh, I see. Like using meditation as an excuse to avoid a difficult conversation with a partner or something.
Exactly, like slapping a spiritual Band-Aid on a deep emotional wound. It might seem helpful on the surface, but...
But you're avoiding the real issue.
Exactly, and that's what's so refreshing about Stern's critique. He's not saying personal development is bad, but we gotta be real about it.
Approach it with open eyes. Question our motives.
Exactly. And then there's the whole leader's arrogance thing. Even the big names in self-help can fall into ego traps.
Which is interesting because he actually owns up to experiencing that himself.
Right. He talks about how he used to think he had all the answers until life threw him a curveball, a cancer diagnosis.
Wow. So this blog post gets really personal.
It does. He talks about how that experience shattered his illusion of control, forced him to confront his own mortality.
And probably challenged a lot of those just think positive platitudes that are so common in the self-help world.
Totally. Because when you're facing something like cancer, it's not about denying fear or pain. It's about
facing it head on.
Exactly. Which brings us to another one of his dark sides. This pressure to have a perfect life, amplified by, you guessed it, social media.
Oh, 100%. It's hard not to get caught up in the comparison game when you're scrolling through Instagram.
Right. Everyone else seems to have it all figured out, and you're just like,
what am I doing wrong?
Right. But Aaron's experience taught him that real strength comes from vulnerability, from embracing our imperfections.
Being human in all its messy glory.
Exactly.
So it's not about hiding those messy parts, those moments of struggle. It's about recognizing they're part of the growth process.
Totally. And he even connects this to a really personal example. His discomfort with nudity, which he later learned to embrace.
Interesting. What do you think he's getting at with that?
To me, it's like he's saying that real personal growth requires us to strip away those layers of pretense, those masks we wear for the world.
To confront those parts of ourselves that we might normally hide.
Exactly. And that's where his concept of radical honesty comes in.
Radical honesty?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more. What's that all about?
It's about being totally upfront with ourselves, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges that carefully crafted self-image.
And that's got to be tough.
It is.
So where do we even begin?
I mean, radical honesty, it sounds so simple on paper, right?
Easier said than done, for sure.
Because, let's be real, we're hardwired to, put our best foot forward.
Yeah, self-preservation 101.
Exactly. It takes guts to admit our flaws, our insecurities, even to ourselves sometimes.
Totally.
Right.
And Stern's not saying it's about, this naive oversharing, just blurting everything out without a filter.
Right, context matters.
It's more about creating this internal space of honesty where you're willing to call yourself out on your own, what's the word?
BS.
Yeah, or he calls it your shadow side.
Which he talks about a lot. Can we dig into that a bit? Those parts of ourselves we tend to just shove under the rug.
Absolutely. He says everyone has a shadow side, right? And it's not always just anger or jealousy.
Oh, interesting.
It could be positive qualities you've buried for whatever reason, stuff you're ashamed of, things you think you shouldn't feel.
So it's more nuanced than just, I have a dark side, I'm a bad person kind of thing.
Right. But by ignoring it, you don't make it disappear.
More like it festers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, he argues a lot of this self-help stuff, this focus on relentless positivity, it can backfire.
How so?
Because by trying so hard to be good and successful, you're actually avoiding those messier parts of yourself.
Avoiding being fully human.
Yes. It's like he says, and this stuck with me, the shadow isn't to be feared or eradicated, but befriended and integrated.
Oh, that's good.
Right. Because it's only when you shine a light on those hidden parts that real healing and growth can happen.
Which I imagine takes some serious courage.
Oh, for sure. Facing those parts of yourself you've judged, rejected, it's scary.
But you said liberating, too.
Right. Because when you stop hiding, you free up so much energy. All that effort you were putting into keeping up a facade.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right. And think about it. How can you connect authentically with others if you're not even honest with yourself?
It's like the foundation for genuine intimacy.
Exactly. Which actually leads into another thing Stern's a big advocate for. Therapy.
Interesting he brings that up. There's still such a stigma around it, you know?
Right. Like it's only for people who are broken. But listen, we all have stuff.
It's more like a tune-up, right? Like taking care of your mental well-being.
Yes. And a good therapist, they can be that safe space to explore those shadows, those feelings you might not feel comfortable sharing with anyone else.
It's like permission to be vulnerable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Stern also stresses personal responsibility, right?
Right. So it's not all on the therapist to fix you.
Exactly. We can't just keep looking for that external quick fix. It's got to come from within, doing that inner work, even when it's uncomfortable.
Like he said, questioning everything, even the experts.
Yes. Develop that intellectual independence. Don't just blindly follow even if someone has a big platform, a fancy title.
Exactly. And that's something we try to emphasize here too, you know. Do your own digging, question things.
Exactly. And remember, this personal growth journey, it's not linear, right?
What do you mean?
There'll be ups and downs, setbacks, moments where you're just like, what am I even doing?
Yeah, those are the worst.
But often those are the times you learn the most about yourself.
It's like the messy middle.
Yes. Embrace the mess.
It's funny, we always talk about like achieving personal growth, like it's a finish line or something.
All right, level up and all that.
But Aaron's kind of saying it's more of a journey, you know? Always evolving, always discovering new stuff about yourself.
And not always pretty or, Instagrammable moments.
Totally. He's all about embracing the messiness, the stuff we usually try to hide.
Because that's where the good stuff is, right? In those shadows he talks about.
Yeah, that's where the real growth happens. He also talks about those guru figures in the self-help world.
Which makes sense, right? We naturally look up to people who seem to have it figured out.
For sure, we all want that secret formula.
But he's cautious about blindly following anyone. Remember that leader's arrogance thing?
Oh, yeah, good point. Just because someone has a platform doesn't mean they're always right.
Exactly. Even the big names, they're human. They make mistakes.
And he's been there himself, right? Got caught up in his own ego, thinking he had all the answers.
It's easy to do, especially when you've got a following. Suddenly you're the guru, and it's all about
maintaining that image.
Yeah. And that can lead to what he calls narcissistic marketing.
Ooh, that's a good one. Sounds kind of predatory almost.
It is. It's less about helping others, more about self-promotion, getting people hooked on your brand of self-improvement.
So how do we avoid that trap as someone who's, seeking genuine growth?
Well, it goes back to what we were saying about honesty and doing the internal work.
So not relying on someone else to fix us.
Exactly. Yeah. Question everything, including those gurus. Look for guidance, yes, but ultimately...
you got to find your own path.
Yes. And it's not about achieving some perfect version of yourself, but becoming more.
You. Authentically you.
Yes. And he gives some practical tips, too, like that radical honesty thing we keep coming back to.
Which, honestly, I'm still wrapping my head around.
It's tough. But it's about being real with yourself, even when it's uncomfortable.
And what's the upside of all that honesty, even if it's painful at times?
Freedom. You stop hiding, you stop pretending, and that frees up so much energy.
It's like taking off a mask you didn't realize you were wearing.
Exactly. And it allows for deeper connections with others, too. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability.
That's so true. So as we wrap up here, any final thoughts from Aaron's deep dive that you think are worth hanging on to?
I think the big one is that personal growth isn't a destination, it's a journey.
And not always an easy one.
No. Be kind to yourself. It's okay to stumble. It's okay to not have it all figured out.
Those are often the moments we learn the most, right?
Absolutely. And be honest with yourself. That's where the real magic happens.
That's a great note to end on.